Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello, and welcome back to You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. You can find me at www.cesarrespino.com. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Tammy Guns. Let me give you a little bit of background before I get her to introduce herself. So Tammy has an extensive corporate industry experience in auditing, business valuations, business development, and healthcare operations, and is for the past 25 years. She started a successful healthcare consulting company with a national footprint of customers. Tammy has served on 2 different board of directors and has published 2 award-winning books. Her educational entails earning 4 college degrees, which include a Master's of Arts in Health and Services Administration, a Master's of Accountancy. She graduated from the University of Michigan and the University of Wisconsin. Tammy is an engaging and informative international keynote speaker, including a TEDx talk in Dallas on Texas on why the best healthcare system starts with you. And she was the honorary chair at a health and wellness conference in Rome, Italy, where she's a presenter on how decision-making is the single biggest factor negatively impacting your health. Tammy, how are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, definitely. So, wow, you have a lot going on for yourself. I mean, I definitely want to hear more about that. And I'm sure there's things that maybe I might have missed. Maybe you want to give us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. So currently I own my own company and I do healthcare consulting as well as I do physician education, and I work with healthcare systems as well as doctors. The reason I do this is I have a background in health administration. So I've worked at children's hospitals, which tend to be academic. They tend to be associated with universities. And then I've also worked in healthcare in adult care settings, which are very, large healthcare systems that have pretty big footprints. And so those are more community-based. So I've kind of had the gamut of healthcare experience with regard to the different healthcare systems that provide the care.
Got it. And so let me ask you something. Let's go back a little bit back in time. Where were you born? What's your background?
Oh, sure. So I was born, I'm a Midwestern girl. I was born in Wisconsin. And I ended up going to, I got my first undergraduate degree in accounting, and then I ended up working at Arthur Andersen for a while. And then I ended up going back to school to get both of my master's degrees. So I went to University of Wisconsin, excuse me for that. Mm-hmm. So then I ended up getting a master's in accounting and a master's in health service administration. And then at the time, I did a postgraduate fellowship at a children's hospital, actually the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin, which was really nice. But at the time, I did pivot within my career, and it was based on the fact, just situational, in that I was married at the time, starting to have young children. And at the time, then we kind of moved around the country in order to promote my then husband's career.
Got it. Now, what led you to get into the healthcare industry?
Well, my mom was a nurse when I was growing up, and I used to volunteer at the hospital that she worked at. In fact, I would go in with her every other weekend when she would go to her shifts. And, I would just, meet with patients and do whatever they wanted, or needed as a volunteer. And so I certainly loved it. It was my mom who really introduced me into the healthcare industry.
Got it. So it was very organic, right? It was obviously in the family, something that you wanted to do. Did you ever had any interest of doing anything else besides healthcare, or that was the only thing you kind of liked?
I mean, when I was young, it was really hard to narrow it down. I really thought, maybe about being a teacher, because I love to share information with people. And it's funny that I wanted to do that when I was really young, because now I do feel like I teach, but in a different capacity,
Right.
in that I teach from the stage and I do presentations across the country and, in fact, internationally as well.
Hmm.
So I use that component. I knew I would not be a nurse like my mom, because I'm much better behind the desk.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Now, in terms of you speaking, on stage and doing that, did you ever see yourself doing that? Was there any at the time in your life where, like, because when people talk about, what people are more fearful of public speaking than death, right? And so,
Right.
how was that for you, though?
That's a good question. Well, it just, and that kind of happened organically as well. And I never really thought I would be a
Mhm.
public speaker. I mean, I didn't even know you could make a living doing that, right?
Right. Yeah.
But interestingly enough, even when I was younger, I would be asked to, get up in front of the whole school and do a presentation, or provide information. And then in my career, I was doing lots of presentations to the C-suite, the CEOs, the chief
Mm.
operating officers, the chief financial officers. So I just organically did presentations. I served on 2 board of directors. And so I was doing presentations as well. But it's funny, because when you think of the name of your show, you can overcome anything.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I was a RA. And so I had to go to this national conference, and they asked me to get up and speak. Well, so here I was, gosh, 20 years old probably. And I got up and I froze. What I was about to say, I completely forgot. And so it was embarrassing to me, because here I am in front of hundreds of people, it's probably even thousands, and I got up in there and I froze. So then what happened is I ended up letting my world get smaller and smaller and
Mm.
smaller, in that then I went back to school, and then I was afraid to raise my hand in class. And then it got smaller, where I'd be afraid to raise my hand and speak in a group. So instead of facing my fear, I let this make my world smaller, smaller, smaller. And then finally I thought, okay, this is crazy. I can't
Mhm.
have this type of anxiety where I can't even speak in a small group of 4 or 5 people. And so you just, again, start pushing the envelope and go, you can do this. Your heart is racing through your chest, but and then you expand. And then here now I speak in front of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So it's just funny to me that, if you let your fears overtake you, you really can remain small.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I tell a lot of people is that sometimes you let the fear take away the opportunity, right? And so
Mhm.
when you tell yourself, I'm not going to allow that fear to take away what potentially could be a good opportunity, whatever that might be, and even if it's not, you're at least facing that. And another thing too is, like, one way that you can really overcome that fear is by facing that fear head on, right? Like, just do the action. Just make sure that even if it's like fearful, just go ahead and do it, right? And
Mhm.
so and so with that, like, I know that some of the people that are listening to us, they might be looking to probably do public speaking or any of that stuff. What would be some tips that you can give them to jump from maybe whatever they're doing and start doing public speaking at whatever capacity?
So you basically, you just take care or take advantage of any opportunity. I know they do have all across the country. There's Toastmasters for people
Mm-hmm.
to get up, very non-judgmental, very safe environment for people to get up and do presentations. Anytime when you're at work, if it's even leading a small group in a meeting, you're starting to get those skills of presentation. You're starting to get the ability to think on your feet and things like that. And so I think it really is just any opportunity that you can, to not be small, try to make your world as large as possible. And it's funny when we're talking about my career and my background. When I first started working at Arthur Andersen, right out of college as an accountant, I chose Arthur Andersen because I was afraid to fly. They were the largest public accounting firm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Mm.
And so I knew they had the least amount of clients out of town. And then they also had a training center in Chicago that I could drive to. Now, funny enough, right? Here I am. Right now, if you were to ask me what is my favorite thing to do, it's get on an airplane and go somewhere. I
Wow.
love
Yeah.
to fly. So again, it makes me chuckle to think when I was so young, something I was so afraid of now I can be on a plane and it can be bouncing all over the place and I'm sleeping,
Right.
it's so funny how when you face your fears, your world expands,
Yeah. There you
right?
go.
And where if you don't face your fear, it can easily consume you and keep your world very, very small.
Yeah, and you know what? That's amazing, and that's again, it's a very good point to make. And I want the listeners and the people that are watching to really take that into consideration, because again, if you let that fear take away that opportunity, you don't know what you're missing out. You're gonna lose out on a lot of opportunities. And so let me ask you something. Like, I know a lot of people too want to jump into becoming their own boss or doing something for themselves. Obviously,
Mhm.
you have your own consulting firm. So what was that decision, maybe leaving the public sector or working for somebody else and then shifting over to working for yourself? How was that transition for you?
Sure. Another great question. Well, so the transition was actually, interestingly enough, the decision was made for me in that I
Mm,
was at a company that laid off hundreds of people during a workforce reduction. But however, it wasn't, I had thought of doing my own business for years, actually.
okay.
But I was a single mom, raising all three of my children 100% by myself. And so, even though in my heart I always wanted to run my own business, I opted for the safety, right? The
Mm-hmm.
safety of working for corporate America because I wanted to have that steady paycheck. I wanted to have the healthcare benefits because I felt like it was the responsible thing to do as a single mom. But like I said, all along my heart was such that I wanted to start my own company. And so then that it was an abrupt decision that was made for me. Now I will say I actually I had other job offers. I could have easily re-entered into, working for others. And that was the time where I thought, you know what, I was clinging to safety in corporate America. And here
Mm-hmm.
it really wasn't safe. I mean, I'd always gotten top reviews. I mean, there was nothing wrong with my performance. It really was, having to do with the company and needing to reduce expenses. And so lots of people, unfortunately, lost their jobs. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, there's no looking back. I really don't want to go work for somebody else. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the flexibility. I enjoy the ability to, do what it is that I love. Now, again, it's scary at times, right? I mean, talk about facing your fears because
Yeah.
as the boss, you're looking down the path. Where's the next contract? Where is the money coming from? And so there's, certainly times of boom and bust and but it's far more acceptable to me than being at a company where I wonder every day, you don't know when you could be
Right.
let go. But
Yeah.
again, it's a personal thing. Some
Yeah.
people would never want to do what I do, but I absolutely enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of the people that are listening to us, they at one point maybe got that idea of leaving their corporate job and working for themselves. And I know for me, when I did that, it was very difficult to do that. And it took me almost 7 months for me to take that leap of faith.
Mm-hmm,
And I'm glad I did.
mm-hmm.
And sometimes I wish I would have done it sooner. Right. Again,
Right.
it was that fear, though, that fear of,
Mm-hmm,
I'm very secure. I have this job. It's a really good company. My performance is good. Why would I go out and do this, right? And so I'm glad I did, because it gave me the opportunity to write a couple of books. It gave me the ability to do more things within my life. And again, it's getting that freedom back, right? But again, it's not for everybody.
mm-hmm.
Now, what were some, as you were going through that initial phase when you decided to, I'm not going to go back to work, I'm going to do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
What were some things that you decided to change, whether it was your mind thinking or habits that you had to change to adjust to this new life?
Well, lots of habits. I mean, but I think a lot of them I learned while being in corporate America, being very organized.
Mm-hmm.
I get up like it's the work day. I'm not getting in a car and driving to work. I mean, although sometimes I do because
Yeah.
I do travel but I'm just saying if I'm working from home, I make sure I'm very structured. If anything, I probably work more and I don't it's normally at 5 o'clock, everyone else is leaving the office. I may still be working till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, or I'll work weekends. And so very much a structured environment. So I have a place where I work, and then when I'm also in my home, there's places where I don't work, where I want it energetically. I want it to feel like it's a place of relaxing. And so I think it's you just have to really have the mind. I think that mindset, though. That's a really good question you asked, but I think the mindset was in me for years before, because I wanted to do it, but I was too afraid to take that leap. And for some people out there who are thinking about, they really want to start their own company, you can straddle both worlds. You can end up working in corporate America and then build your business, on evenings and weekends, if it really is something that's in your heart's desire. And now more than ever, I mean, when I was growing up, it was pretty rare to think that you would have your own company. And I just think the opportunities with the internet and our global connectedness, and it's far more opportunity nowadays for people to, be in business for themselves. So
yeah, no, definitely. I think there's it's a new era for sure. I think there's a lot more people, more entrepreneurs trying to, again, with technology now. I mean, I'm in LA and where are you? Somewhere over there.
I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, again, with technologies, you can do so many different things now, right? So, so yeah, I do agree with you on that. Now, obviously you have multiple degrees, so I want to get your opinion on how important or it is, and what are your beliefs from traditional school to non-traditional education?
Okay, another awesome question. Okay, so again, in the era that I grew up, traditional education was really more the path that most people took, okay? And one of the reasons I ended up getting 4 college degrees is not because I just like to be in school all the time, although I love learning. There was a pertinent reason for each of them, and at the time. And so again, going back to a story, when I was 2 years old, my father broke his neck in our neighbor's pool. And so I had a 6-year-old brother, a 4-year-old brother. I was 2, and then my sister Michelle was just born. She was a baby. My parents were high school sweethearts, got married very, very young, had kids very, very young. Well, when my dad broke his neck, now, I mean, just so that people aren't going to a sad place, everything worked out fine. He's fine.
Good.
I mean, it was a miracle, actually. However, he was going through a process where they didn't know if he was going to walk and have to have surgery and all that. And my mom felt incredibly helpless because she had a high school education and she could not go into the workforce and make more than minimum wage, which you cannot feed a family of 4 children plus what could have been a disabled husband. And so because of that situation, I since the age of 2, my mom always told me, Tammy, you have to go to college because you have to be able to financially take care of your family in case anything happened, whether there's a death or divorce or a disability. So pretty much my whole life, I heard school, 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 go to college, go to college. Well, now I will say that I am still a lifelong learner. I have probably spent way more hours doing self-development work than I ever did sitting in college, even though here I have 4 college degrees. So obviously I was in the classroom.
Yeah.
But I think that you should never stop learning because there's always something new. It keeps you growing. It keeps you expanding. And it also, I think, keeps you alive because, one of the things, because I'm in healthcare, I always say you really want your health span to equal to your life span. I see a lot of people who are, especially in our healthcare system, that, they're being kept alive and they really are not really living a life. They're just, staying alive. And so, I really want people's health span to equate to their lifespan. And so, I think that lifelong education, whenever there's an opportunity, I have stuff on my calendar all the time to go to conferences or to read books or watch podcasts so that you can always be learning and expanding instead of shrinking and dying.
Right, and that's, I love that. Instead of drinking and dying, I love that. I wanted to find out more of what are some of the self-development that you're doing. So you do a lot of conferences. What kind of conferences do you do? Is it in the healthcare industry or?
It varies. So sometimes I'll go for professional development, certainly within my career from the healthcare component.
Yeah.
But I probably do way more things like, I've seen Bob Proctor a couple times, he's from The Secret. Always everything I do is all about living your best life, finding happiness no matter what. And so many of these things will sound cliche, but when you when you peel it back, it really is the truth. Like no one else is responsible for your happiness, or, you know, and I know this for a fact. I was sitting on the beach of Hawaii. If someone would have taken a picture of me, they must have thought, wow, she must be in the happiest place. I was not in a good place at the time, right?
Yeah.
And yet I've been in my own living room, laughing, or a song comes on and I'll get up and go dance in the kitchen, so it's not your environment. In fact, Sean Acor, he's a Harvard grad, and he talks on happiness. He was saying that your environment only is responsible for 10%. They can only do a predictive level by taking a picture of your environment and knowing, or a snapshot. That's only a 10% predictor of your level of happiness. And me being on the beach of Hawaii or in my kitchen is the perfect example. It does not predict the people's level of happiness.
Wow. Yeah. I love doing, conferences, seminars too. I feel for me, the best way I can probably describe that is it's like church for entrepreneurs. I feel like, you always go back, and it's always good to see the people that are speaking, because they definitely bring a lot of value. There's a lot going on there. I've also found that in these places you can find people that are at a higher level, that are playing at a higher level, or people that are doing the things that you want to do, people that you can relate to. And so it's always good to find great connections. I found a lot of great connections in these events that, we've gotten into either joint ventures, or we've gotten into some sort of, friendship, even friendships that last forever. So it's definitely, for me, it's definitely something that I really empower people that want to get into the journey of entrepreneurship to do that, So
absolutely. In fact, so I forgot to mention, and so you said it quite brilliantly, the networking opportunities when you go to the convention. So not only, the learning that you're doing personally, but then the connections that you make, like you said. So there's opportunities for business, or just somebody like a colleague on the road, the same road, that you can call up and say, I'm facing this or I'm facing that. And so they also have faced the same thing. So it's nice to have somebody that's not, experiencing some of the same, issues that you are, or opportunities, and how can you help one another.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And then you talk about books. What kind of books do you read? Do you get in People magazines or any of that stuff?
Okay. I actually don't. I don't read a People magazine, or the only time I'm standing in the grocery line and I read the covers, right?
Right. That's when you find out about all the latest news, right? You're like sitting on the line, waiting in line, and you see all these different things that I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was happening.
So-and-so's getting divorced. Oh, okay. No, that's the only time I look at that stuff. I'm actually a book. I'm reading 2 books right now. Actually, a girlfriend of mine gave one to me. Another, Malcolm Gladwell. He's one of my favorite authors. I read his book Blink, where he basically, it has a lot to do with how you energetically can read people versus your, the frontal cortex of your cerebral, hemispheres, and that you really are. We try to do things with our head, but really it's our heart that can read a situation. I'm reading a big book right now. It's almost like a textbook on energy medicine, because I'm kind of fascinated with that stuff right now, and how we energetically, are intertwined within our environments.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. And talking about books, so you have a couple of books. Tell me about your books. What inspired you writing those books? What's the content? What are you trying to leave with the readers?
Well, both of the books were written at particular times in my life when I was going through some stressful situations, and my way to deal with stress is I like to move. So when I can, I try to walk at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half every day. And it's kind of my walking meditation time, in that I try to be still. Well, I live in Colorado, so Colorado's beautiful. You can go on beautiful walking paths where you're out in nature. And while I'm there, I think, or I replay the day, or a lot comes to me. And so both of my books I wrote while I was walking. The first one I wrote was on how to heal your heart and soul from divorce. That was, of course, at a time when I was going through a divorce. It was about, I think, a year after that I wrote it. And I wrote that just because I thought, there were some things that I felt that I didn't, had never experienced. And I didn't know if I could, others were feeling the same way. And I wanted to be able to share that with them. And then the second book that I wrote, which is Your Ultimate Daily Guide for Success, And it's just practical tips and tricks, so that people can live a life of how they define success, and how to overcome obstacles. It's real small vignettes. You could literally open it up to any chapter because it's not sequential, and just different, situations that happen and how you can, overcome challenges to have your success.
And you mentioned something earlier, and maybe it's linked to, you can find it on this book, is making sure that you're living your best life. How would you define that in your terms, in terms of what is living your best life, to you?
To me, it's living a balanced life, because I think it's very, very easy to get out of balance. And so I guess even when I do my presentations, this is kind of how I explain it, in that we have different buckets in our life, right? So you could have your career bucket and a finance bucket, and you could have a relationship bucket, but even those can be separate, like a relationship with a romantic partner, a relationship with children, like relationship with your family, your parents. It's what about your health bucket? Are you getting, time to go exercise, or time to do things for your mental well-being? Or then some people have spiritual buckets and friend buckets, right? So we've all these different areas in our lives. And so when I find that I'm the most unhappy, or when I look back on my life and I kind of do a review, when I look at the times that I was not in a good place, it's because one bucket was really out of balance and really taking up too much of my time and energy and focus. So I have found that the more my buckets are in balance, the happier I am. And so, which is even why now I'm pivoting to doing more online education, because I was doing so much travel that, yes, my career bucket was doing great and the finance bucket was doing great, but my own, and here I did a TEDx talk on how to stay healthy. I was, grabbing food quickly in the airport and, not getting to the gym as much as I should. And so to me, if one or two buckets are overflowing and the other ones are empty, then you're not living a life of balance.
Right. So that's critical. Definitely balance, all around, right? And I know that there's a lot of people, sometimes they focus on, like you said, maybe just a career or one part of the their life, and then they forget about the other stuff, right? And one thing, actually, as a matter of fact, that I can relate to this too is, if you're working for somebody else and you're looking at possibly getting to your own business, you might be focusing so much on that job and doing so much for that business that you come home tired, or whatever the case may be. And then you forget about your family, or you forget about even working on yourself to get you out of that, right? And so I always tell people is that just make sure that whatever you do, regardless of what you're doing, you always work harder on yourself than you do on anybody else. Because again, as you know, the only vehicle that we have that carry us through this life is our body. And so we have to take care of ourselves, right? So
absolutely. You said that perfectly. Yes. Well, and actually my TEDx talk that I did on why the best healthcare system starts with you, throughout the TEDx talk, I really do an analogy with a car. And I say, if we had one car and one car only for our entire lives, don't you think we would be hyper vigilant about taking care of it? You would have your auto mechanic on speed dial, because you'd want to make sure you're getting, you say, this is the make, this is the model, this is the year. What kind of diagnostic tests do I have to have done? You'd have, ample tread on those tires at all times. You would make sure the oil is always changed. And yet, why, when we get one body and one body only, are we not that hyper vigilant about taking care of it? In fact, we abdicate that responsibility a lot of times to a doctor or to a healthcare system, and we all know our healthcare system is broken and has, right, it's a year of election. So we're hearing a lot about what's your healthcare plan. So we know that we have this broken system that needs to be fixed. So why would you rely on that system or abdicate the responsibility to somebody else for your health? Absolutely not.
Right.
But yet, we do. I mean, there's a lot of things we do which are negative for our health, and we get one body and only one. So.
Yeah. And by the way, if you guys haven't checked it out, you need to check out her the TEDx talk. Is pretty awesome. I watched it. It was very, very informative. A lot of great stuff there too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I have a couple more questions for you, and I wanted to ask you, what is one thing that you can tell our listeners or viewers that they can do to overcome anything in their lives?
Well, first of all, it doesn't matter if you fall down 100 times, as long as you get up on that 101st try, right? And that, excuse me, the path to success or anything that you want, anything is not, it's not always perfect. It's not one step forward, one step forward, one step forward. A lot of times you can have 3 steps forward and then 4 steps back. But as long as you keep your eye on the target and your goal, you'll get there. And actually a good analogy of this is that cartoon that we used to watch when we were younger with the tortoise and the hare. And I remember as a kid, when I would watch that cartoon, I would get so mad. I'm like, this is the silliest cartoon. Of course, the hare is faster. The only reason the turtle won is because the hare went and took a nap underneath the tree, lost sight of the finish line. What's the point of this, cartoon? Right. Now, as an adult, I think it's the most brilliant cartoon because, yes, the hare had all these great abilities and talents, but it was the turtle that never lost sight of the finish line. And so the turtle just kept going slow and steady, wins the race. Yeah. And so that's the advice I would have. I mean, if you really have some goal that is meaningful to you and it's important to you, keep your eye on that prize and you will get there. And don't feel you have to get there as fast as the rabbit because the rabbit lost sight.
Right. And a lot of times too is a lot of people want to measure themselves to somebody else and say, well, we kind of started at the same time and that person's way ahead of me. And so when you start measuring yourself to somebody else, you're also losing sight of the target. Everybody's going to go at a different speed, right? And just because somebody's going faster doesn't mean you have to go at that speed. You have to just make sure you focus on you and you yourself, right?
Yeah, because absolutely. Yeah. I remember, I think Oprah was the one who said this, where she was saying, if you're in a race, a running race, and you're always looking where other people are and you're not watching, right? It's easy for the other runners now to pass you or whatever. So always focus on your own race because we're all individualistic. We all have all sorts of variables that are impacting our lives. And so no, to compare to others is just will negatively, pull yourself down.
Right. And with that though, because I know I get this a lot too, is like I know it is like, don't give up and, obviously continue to push forward, you fall down, get up and continue to do that. What would you tell people that when they're like, man, I keep falling down and it seems like I'm not going nowhere. And then they get this idea of, I just got to give up. This is not for me. Like, what would be something you can tell people that, don't give up regardless of, how many times you fell down, right? Because that can be very discouraging for people. And they're like, you know what? It's not for me anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear you on that one. Well, a couple of things. What really helped me is I have a network of amazing friends, a lot of really amazing girlfriends who are the first ones that will help pick me up and dust me off and say, keep going on. I would also say that when you look at success leaves clues. And when you study other really successful business people, like people who, now again, when defining success here financially, right? Like they've done well, because people can be successful parents or successful partners, but I'm just saying the way that the Western culture tends to define success. When you look at people who've been successful in business and are multimillionaires, you peel back the layers, they have had at least one, if not several bankrupt companies. So I think what you always want to do is define what you want to do, and maybe the way that you're doing it as failure, you need to pivot on a different path, not to say you can't keep that same end goal. So, I mean, obviously you don't want to keep, knocking your head up against the wall where it's nothing is fruitful. Right. But the fact that you're maybe not succeeding in one particular area doesn't mean you can't succeed in something else.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that don't see failure as you actually failing. Failure is actually a lesson, or it's a way of knowing not how to do it anymore and learning from that to become better, right? Because a lot of people see it as, failure is bad. And as a matter of fact, even in our school district, in school districts, growing up, they would tell you, you always got to win. You cannot fail, or even if you get a bad grade, it's like, that's bad. It might be bad from that perspective, but really it's not bad. It's just helping you become more aware of what you have to change to become better, right?
Yes. So, in fact, when I think about being back in school, it wasn't the questions I got right on the exams that I can remember to today, but the questions that you got wrong, you're like, you go back and look at it. So Absolutely. It's not, and even when they say rejection is really just redirection, right? So it's, you're learning, you're always learning. In fact, one of the things, because I'm single, you know, I told you I was divorced, when a relationship has ended, you know, while I'm dating, I always go back and look at it, because I look at, first of all, what was the gift? There was a gift there, you know, something that person taught me. And then I also look back and say, you know, where was the area of opportunity where I could have showed up better? So even though the relationship, you know, would be considered a failure, right, because it ended, there's still positives that you can learn from it. So.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So, Tammy, if people wanted to maybe, I don't know, get your books or reach out to you, or maybe, you know, maybe they want to invite you to speak at one of their conferences, how can people get a hold of you?
Wonderful. Well, there's several ways to get a hold of me. I actually give out my personal email because I want people to feel, you know, that they could have a connection with me. So my email is simply my name. It's tammylynnguns@gmail.com. I have a website as well, which is www.tammylynnguns.com. A really great way to get a hold of me is to connect with me on LinkedIn. I have acquaintances from all around the world on LinkedIn. And so people are more than welcome to do that as well. And so my books are available on Amazon.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, and don't worry, guys. I'm going to have all of this information on the comments, so you guys can actually, if you didn't catch that, you can actually get that there. Tammy, this has been wonderful. Is there anything else that you want to tell our viewers and listeners before I let you go?
Just to, you know, find joy every single day. We have far more ordinary days than we have extraordinary days. And so if you can find joy in your day, it's nice. That keeps you going, you know, especially during those tough days.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's awesome, Tammy. This was really good. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for you know, coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. It was enjoyable.
Yeah. Definitely. And for the rest of you guys, please make sure that you share, like, subscribe to this podcast, share it with everybody. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker.com, YouTube, all over the place. Till next time, I'll see you at the next interview. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Do you feel stuck? Do you feel like life is against you? Do you feel like you can't get ahead? Well, we have a podcast for you. You can overcome anything with Cesar Espino. Real estate investor and real estate coach, NLP practitioner, and author of the book of the same name. Cesar will show you a way to overcome anything in your life through talking with people from all walks of life that have done just that. You Can Overcome Anything podcast available on Spreaker.com.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you tuned in to this podcast. You can find me at Spreaker.com, where you can like and subscribe. And to learn more about myself and my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at Facebook under Cesar R. Espino. Once again, thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having you at the next episode, and know that you truly can overcome anything.